Welcome. You all are my heroes for showing up to something entitled Dry Lent. I am proposing that we have a juicy Lent. I think that sounds like much more fun. Something juicy without the juice. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can manage that. But the write-up that I sent Matthew really did have a lot to say about. We're going to make this a part book club, part mocktail party. So it is very much my aim to make this fun. So I'm going to let you know a little bit about what we're going to talk about, and then I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A. So for introduction,
I was going to say,
get to I'm Martha Wright, and I'm a Trinity member. I am a certified sobriety mindful drinking coach, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my story in just a moment. I'm hoping that in the next 20 minutes, I can share with you some information and insights that will convince you that the topic of alcohol and looking at alcohol in our culture is pretty fascinating and an actual fun topic, not dry at all. Even if you cannot join us for the 5-week sessions, I'm really hoping that you still would come away from this chat with some new awareness about what I think is a very exciting total paradigm shift in how we talk about alcohol in our culture. So I will also then say a few words about what exactly we're going to do in our 5 weeks in the class. And I'm going to get to what is different about this approach and what we're going to do from a typical dry month or a dry January. Have you all heard the joke about how many Episcopalians does it take to change a light bulb? Do you know? So is it? Yes, right. Variations on that. So 1 to change the light bulb, 3 to make the cocktails, or you've heard the one, or 1 to change the light bulb. I can't do the math on the 5th. I've heard the other variation, 1 to change the light bulb, 3 to make the cocktails, and another 3 to form a committee to talk about how the old lights were better. So we joke, and I think that's very funny. And I think I have joked about drinking. It's interesting though about jokes and the social currency that is created. Interesting for me to learn that we're 10 times more likely to share an article or share a post that is something that we think increases our social currency, something funny, something light, something about the benefits of alcohol. And what that means is that we end up with a very skewed idea of the benefits and versus maybe some of the concerns about alcohol. So very interesting. So to that end, let's be rebels and question just a bit and have fun doing it. Question just a bit alcohol. Again, I'm talking about the joke, the social currency, but it's because of that alcohol doesn't get questioned. So no harm in just taking a little bit of time and just asking some questions. And that is what led me on this journey. And that's what I want to do in this Lenten alcohol experiment. So in terms of just kind of taking a look and questioning, it's interesting to consider what happens when you tell people or you think about telling people that you're not drinking. we have this image that suddenly the music stops. It's like the, record, everything goes quiet and everybody turns, what? You're not drinking? Do you have a problem? Can't you just have one? So it's very interesting to think about why, just, for sake of interest, why is this the only drug that we have to justify not taking? Is that kind of interesting? I was sharing with some of you that that for several years in the past, I don't remember what years they were, I did give up alcohol for Lent. And then there were some years where I just thought, ooh, I will give up anything. But I think, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give up gluten. That's what I'm going to do. For several years, I couldn't conceive of making a change in my relationship with alcohol because I genuinely feared life would be less fun, less sparkly. And it turns out that is a nearly universal concern. We come to believe that we need alcohol to celebrate, or that at least that alcohol is a very primary part of celebration, bonding, loosening up, getting creative, being sexy, or being a good host or a good guest. And it's not at all uncommon to have just a fear of feeling less fun or left out. Yet, when I've asked large groups when they've felt most alive in their lives, not one mentioned alcohol. When I've asked groups when it was they felt the recipient of radical hospitality, welcome, so glad you're here. When I've asked groups when they felt the recipient of radical hospitality, not one mentioned alcohol. Again, in this theme of questioning, just looking, just asking some questions. Why is it that we might know more about the toxicity of a water bottle, what that container is made of, than we do about a substance that we might be drinking every single day? Honey, I didn't bring a bottle with me, but we could also say, why is it that this bottle of non-alcoholic wine is required by law to tell you everything that's in it, including the sugar and the calories, but this bottle of alcohol is not? Last year and every year for many years, 95,000 Americans died from alcohol-related causes. That's more than opioids. Yet we don't talk about an alcohol crisis. How about just the idea that when you quit drinking, that's when someone says, oh, you must have had a problem. I don't know if you all could hear that at home. You must have had a problem. What happened? What was your story? What was that rock bottom? We don't do that with cigarettes. Very interesting. Then what's up with mommy wine culture? I don't know anyone who is a mom with young kids. I do not need to hold up this example. Your social media feeds are flooded with images and funny, silly things about wine and alcohol of all kinds. I'm not picking on wine. This is Amy Schumer, the very popular and hilarious comedian, with a just enormous glass of wine. But the memes and jokes, motherhood, remember, it's not drinking alone if you're pregnant. It's not drinking alone if the kids are home. Here's the handy chic leather bag with a wine spout. The spout to just convenient for meetings, games, brownie Girl Scout meetings, all that. So not at all picking on moms. This was me. I identify with that mommy wine culture. And I can absolutely give examples in another talk of ways that I participated in it and bought into it. But I'd love to just say now I want to be more curious about what's behind this, and can we figure out ways and talk more about how can we give moms support that they really need. We can get curious about alcohol, the alcohol industry's tagline, drink responsibly. But moderation is trickier than it sounds, especially when no one knows what moderation is. And the definition has changed. So has the size of wine glasses, interestingly. Here's a photo. You all see I'm so low tech. I'm going to do a PowerPoint for next time if that seems like that would be of interest. I tend to just kind of go on what we want to talk about. But everyone sees, oh, a nice glass of wine by the fire. And the only problem is that's 2 glasses of wine. Does anyone know how many glasses? This is a very typical wine glass, and the kind that my husband and I use. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about our history as winemakers, and we are still in the wine industry. So this is a very popular crystal Riedel glass. It's considered, the proper glass. Does anyone know how many glasses of wine, like standard glasses of wine, would fit in that glass? By chance? The whole bottle. The whole bottle.
Which is now 5.
Yeah.
5 glasses.
Yes. Let me, would you be oh, just a picture. Sorry, you said, is it an actual glass? No, it is. It's a photo. And I did think of bringing in the glasses. Something else that was kind of interesting to me, and I hadn't done this. I don't use my wedding glasses, the crystal, but I thought, so I hadn't even looked at them. And I pulled out that 26-year-old crystal, and to see the size of the wine glass, it's much smaller. And then to go to an antique shop and realize that they're smaller, it is kind of interesting. So I did that. I was on K2 with Helen Raptis 4 different times. And on one of the shows, I had her pour a bottle, and she kept getting nervous, that's enough. And I said, keep going, keep going, keep going. And we just did that visual where she emptied out the whole bottle into that. So anyway, I hope I have just piqued your curiosity about how much there is to look at. And that this is just a little bit of the kinds of things that we get to dig into over 5 weeks. Not surprisingly, drinking during the pandemic went up 20%. During certain periods of it, it was even higher than that, but a full 20%. But so did interest in taking a break, which is very, very interesting to see. So what is changing, and is there, light on the horizon? Absolutely. What's changing is a total paradigm shift. We have had in our culture a paradigm of a very binary understanding of alcohol and drinking. You're either a normal drinker, or you have a problem. And that is a very difficult and very harmful idea. And what happens is it keeps people stuck. This paradigm has really changed, and an awareness that this is a continuum. So we really, alcoholic, the term alcoholic is really not used as a medical designation. That, yeah, we can discuss that in the Q&A. And you do note I said the word medically. It doesn't mean that people don't use the word alcoholic. We can talk about an alcohol use disorder on a spectrum. And that really is a big difference. So the movement is exploding. And this is a movement around changing the culture and making it more visible that it is okay to question alcohol at any point for any reason. 20% of adults in the US participated in Dry January this year. That figure is even higher for millennials. It was more like 27%. Sober bars, not an oxymoron, sober bars are popping up all over the country. Bottle shops devoted to non-alcoholic beverages are popping up all over the country, even in Portland. So Portland now has its first sober bar. Right now, it is a pop-up. It's not a permanent. It's not open, all week. It's pop-up while they're testing their concept. And a good friend of mine opened a bar in Denver that's been a sensation by day. It's a coffee shop and bottle shop for non-alcoholic beverages. And by night, it's a very lively bar with just different activities. And it's been very, very well embraced. People feeling seen, people feeling welcomed into a space that had formerly felt off limits or not comfortable. So what I'm seeing that is exciting to me is these producers all across the country are incredibly passionate. I'm finding in what they're doing, what they're saying, what their mission is, the beverages they're producing, the integrity of the ingredients going into these products. I'm finding the excitement and energy and passion that drew me to the wine business in the first place. In Oregon, we do have several producers of non-alcoholic beverages that I'd love to tell you about during our sessions together, and we'll get a chance to taste some of them. We also have a few Oregon non-alcoholic beers now. This is all happening right now in real time. And I mean, just a few weeks ago, this little talk, I wouldn't have been able to say that there were non-alcoholic beers in Oregon. I mean, it's really changing that fast. Every major label of beer or spirit that you can think of is coming, if either has now in the last year developed a non-alcoholic version, or they have it in the works. And that's pretty exciting to see how fast this is growing. A year ago, Zupan's carried 1 NA beer, and today they have at least 12. That gives you an idea. Libraries are filled with what we call in these circles, quit lit. Piles of books, including the one that we're going to talk about, The Alcohol Experiment by Annie Grace. So just my story I wanted to share. My husband and I have been in the wine industry for 20 years and still are. I spent 25 years in food and wine. I started working with celebrity chefs, then got into founding a winery with my husband. We started it, we had no money, we had no experience in the wine industry. And it was just passion and naivete. And we were very, very blessed and really loved all along the people that we met and the friendships that spanned continents. But the problem was, after some years, things didn't feel good. And wine was playing a different role in my life. And I was experiencing symptoms, and I felt more fixated than I wanted to. I also felt a lack of motivation. I had a lot of ideas and couldn't get anything done. The fixation I mentioned, having a desire to give up alcohol for Lent, and then thinking, no way, I'm not doing it. Plus, we have sauce on. I couldn't possibly be the chair of sauce on and not drink that fabulous $2 chuck. I don't know why I was worried about not drinking that, but that's the hold that it had. My comparing myself to others helped keep me stuck. I don't drink that much. Other people in the wine industry drink, I think, this much or more. Do you think I drink too much, husband? Do you think I drink too much, daughter? And that kind of comparing and looking for information outside of me is really what kept me stuck. And a very big breakthrough came for me the day that some kind of voice just said, this doesn't have to do with anyone else, and you're asking the wrong question. The question is not, do I drink more or less than anyone else? The only question is, how do I feel? That really changed everything for me. Now, that epiphany was very powerful, but I did not see the path. So I stayed in that place, questioning, knowing that I wanted something to change, but having no idea how to do it. I had tried boundaries. I'm gonna only drink this many glasses. I'm only gonna drink during the week. I'm only gonna drink on the weekends and not during the week. I'm only gonna drink on and on. And it is demoralizing. It chips away at a confidence and trust in oneself to go surpass those boundaries again and again. And again, I just didn't see the path or have the tools. Through a friend, I was very lucky that a friend by chance mentioned Annie Grace and the Alcohol Experiment. And with this science-backed, grace-forward approach that explores what alcohol does do, what it doesn't do, and how we begin to chip away at the beliefs that we have about alcohol. This approach and the methodology and the neuroscience just clicked for me. It made sense for me. The idea about chipping away at those beliefs is that we can't change our drinking without changing our thinking. Let's see. So for me, what happened is I loved what I was feeling, the changes that I was feeling. I was loving what I learned. I was loving the people that I was meeting. So I immediately signed up to do a certification program with the author of the book and realized that I wanted to help other people who felt like I had felt and didn't see a path, did not see, well, where do I go? How do I make alcohol small and irrelevant in my life? And I also realized that I wanted to, from within the alcohol industry, I wanted to help contribute to how can we create a better drinking culture? Not needing to demonize anything or anybody, but to say, what could I do to help create a better drinking culture where there are more options of someone wanting to take a break, but options at social events, options in wineries. At that point, I no longer was operating a tasting room, but I've written a public letter apologizing to the non-drinkers who visited our winery. I didn't see them. I felt I was generous to offer a glass of water. But to offer a glass of water, they had to have already isolated in the corner and looked out of the herd. And the me of today would say, I could have had a local kombucha on tap. I could have had nitro coffee. I could have had some of these NA beers that are being produced. I could have had a lovely sparkling water in shrub made from berries from the property. There's so many interesting things that we can do with beverages. And of course, at every moment, there are a jillion reasons that someone might not be drinking today. we've had this for people, you know, looking at, depending on our demographic, we might say, well, I don't know, that doesn't happen to me, but there are women of a certain age that they can't possibly turn down a drink without immediately being asked if they're pregnant. Now, it shouldn't be that way, and we can do better. And so I have really enjoyed trying to talk to other people in the wine industry. I've written open letters. I've shared ideas with people in the industry. I've participated in a group that is promoting balance within the alcohol industry itself, and very much encouraging restaurants and bars to have more on offer. What's interesting is the companies that are selling these non-alcoholic beverages, they are growing like gangbusters. I know several of them, and they are finding that it's not just abstainers or teetotalers that are buying these products. Restaurants are able to see that people who drink are appreciating these products. It allows them to slow down or to not drink on certain nights. And so what we're seeing is the more options we put out there, interestingly, people take us up on it. The three things involved in behavior change are knowledge, emotion, and behavior. And most people, including myself, who did not know any better at the time, just try to change a habit by working on behavior. I'm just going to not do that thing. What will be different in this approach is that we take a look at all three. We're going to really look at the knowledge. We're going to really look at the emotion and the mindset. In this course that I'm inviting you to take part in, we are going to read day by day through Annie Grace's book, The Alcohol Experiment. I am proposing that our first day, our day one, will be the day after our first session. So if this is a bonus for anyone, if you were thinking about a dry Lent, this program that I'm doing is only 30 days. So you get to decide if that is like, oh, sweet, I'm doing 30. So this book is, and this approach is set up very specifically and intentionally with this word experiment. Annie Grace, the author, chose that word specifically because it's an experiment. There's no right and wrong. There's no failing. As scientists working on an experiment, there's no, oh, well, that was a disaster and didn't work. There's always information. So what we're committing to is 30 days of being curious, 30 days of just really saying, let me just see what this feels like. Let me just see what it would be like to not drink at this event. And we're gonna have fun talking about it. So to get clear on what I am not a doctor or medical professional of any kind. So anyone participating in this alcohol experiment, if you have any questions whatsoever about the going dry and stopping drinking, if you have any questions, absolutely refer to your physician. Most people that I work with have a pretty good sense of how that would feel for them based on, you know, well, I was sick, or it was a snow day and there was no, alcohol in the house. So a lot of people have a feeling of how that would go, or they've taken breaks before. But if you have any question at all, easy to just check with your physician. The approach that we're going to use is really going to be based on fun. I want this to be fun. The way I like to describe it to people is that we can create an environment where this can feel like a luscious sabbatical. If you were lucky enough to work for a company that gave you a month off after a certain amount of service, what would you do in order to feel replenished, rejuvenated, restored at the end of a month? Very few people say I'd burn the candle at both ends. So this can be a month where we really focus on what we're adding in lots of hydration and mineral water, which is great for the brain, adding in nourishing food, adding in warm baths and nice walks and inspirational podcasts, music if you want, fresh flowers, buy yourself a treat. We can eat dark chocolate. I love that. Chocolate is fabulous for our brains. We really, in this approach, focus on the gains. And again, we are committing just to being curious. There's no commitment beyond this break. We absolutely are creating an environment of confidentiality, and it is a stigma-free zone because we are going to be exploring the physiology and what happens in the brain and the reward, the pleasure center and the reward center of the brain, and the role of dopamine and how these habits get formed and how these neural pathways get formed in the first place. And when we do that, it really removes a layer of stigma. And when we understand how the brain really works, the neuroscience behind it. We're also going to taste some of the beverages that I mentioned. We will talk about moderation and how that can work, and also very clearly what is very, very tricky about moderation. What I can tell you is that surveys have shown that people, 92% of people who do a 30-day break feel much happier after the completion of it. That's pretty interesting. Not even just happier, but the stats say much happier. I have some other stats about what people have found in big surveys, but based on my own experience with my groups, I did a survey and 100% of the people I've worked with felt significant physical, mental, and mindset shifts after this 30-day program. 100% felt that it was more interesting than anticipated. So that is pretty exciting. And I welcome all of you to join me in this experiment and just see what we can get curious and learn. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for your patience with these little hiccups and me getting used to this hybrid. And I'd love to open it up for questions. Any questions? Any questions?
I do actually do have a question. Is the class itself going to be offered hybrid and or recorded?
It will be.
Okay.
Awesome question. Yes, the class will be hybrid and recorded. So,
And
oh wait,
when
let
does it
me think about that. Sorry.
Yeah, the recorded.
Sorry.
I'm wondering about.
Okay. Very good question. Matthew and I discussed that. I would like your feedback. Matthew and I discussed that. I said that very quickly, just knee-jerk reaction. He and I discussed the fact that I have typically not recorded sessions for confidentiality. And that is, I think that is important. But I'd love your feedback on that.
So I'm wondering about that is if you do switch to a PowerPoint or some sort of outline that's shared, that you maybe could share that part of it. Like the recipes and things like that.
Right.
Because some of us have other commitments on Wednesday nights.
Right. So the resources, yes, resources, exercises, things like that. I have a ton of resources on my website even, but yes, we could absolutely do that. Share any of the kind of exercises, resources, and not share the conversation. I do want it to be, I want everyone to be able to chat. This reminds me too, that I really want to say that the other sessions will not be anything like this one. I am not going to be talking. It's going to be all of us in conversation together. There'll be typically a prompt and some kind of interesting exercise, and we're going to come in and everyone's going to get to share, gosh, what was that first week like? What was hard? What went better than you thought? What did you notice? And it's pretty fun to kind of get in on what everyone notices. So thank you for saying that. And we'll make clear, Matthew and I will talk about it, and we'll share that clearly. Anyone else have comments or thoughts about the idea of recordings or making it?
I have one. Is
Oh,
there a
yes.
way that this is Jan, is there a way that like any presentation, PowerPoint, like there could be recorded video of that part of the like the introductory part and the questions, but not record or edit out the confidential like conversation stuff and just have like the questions, but not necessarily the answer part?
Jan, thank you so much for that. You know, I'm going to be really in thinking this through. There's really not going to be a PowerPoint presentation. I'll tell you why. You all see that I'm very low tech anyway, but this really, I had some material on this as a presentation. The content is here. It's amazing. Every day, there's just a whole new bit of very accessible, easy to understand neuroscience, or talking about alcohol in our culture and different ways of looking at things and things that'll make you go, oh, wow, I had no idea that, you know, I had no idea about that. There's space for journaling. So the content's really here. And then when we come together, there's no need really for me to have PowerPoint more material. The point of our sessions is really going to be a huge part of what makes this all interesting and works is getting to discuss it and synthesize it and kind of and share it and bounce it off each other. So, but for sure, I can share, you know, any of the resources, kind of extra things. Absolutely. So please go ahead and sign up. I think what that means is you would just sign up. That means you'd then be on the list and any resources would then get shared out. A question here. Yeah, please.
Okay. I'm sorry, I came into the class a little late, but do you think that like some of the stigma between, in regards to drinking culture of any place is due to prohibition and the puritanical behavior that this country had in regards to alcohol and some of the organized crime that sprung up from it?
Fabulous question. There's so much that we can get into. I think that is an excellent point, and absolutely there is so much that we could talk about the effect of policy on various substances, the way that policy has impacted how we view substances. So I think you're absolutely right. The influence of a very puritanical stance. We can find examples, we can think of examples here of, you know, why we've regarded certain substances, you know, this substance is completely socially acceptable, but this substance over here makes you a druggie. You know, I grew up in a culture like that very mixed messages. There's so much about policy that is really interesting about how it can create stigma. And we can also look at different demographics and privilege. And I mean, we could get into a really interesting discussion about sort of the privilege, like those memes that I shared, and the internet again is filled with those memes. We could look at, would those memes circulate and be as funny if we were talking about, or if Kathy Lee and Hoda Kotb were doing tequila shots at 9 a.m. on the news? Would it be okay if they were eating gummies, you know, marijuana gummies? Would it be okay? There's all kinds of interesting things about that. So I think you're bringing up a really fun point.
I actually have another.
Yeah,
question.
please.
So it's going to be Fat Tuesday, or Strove Tuesday for the northern people.
I am from New Orleans, Mardi Gras.
Oh,
Wow, how fun!
I am from Homa, so that is so
cool.
good to meet another Cajun.
Yes.
How could you introduce non-alcoholic drinks to Mardi? You know.
Oh yeah.
I know. So I don't even have to tell you, but how has that gone down in the Dirty Dirty?
I love it. All right, thank you for that. Because I didn't share that piece of my history. born and raised in New Orleans, and very much, what's interesting is it absolutely was a very permissive culture to grow up in. And alcohol was so much a part of the fabric. What's interesting though is now to get with a different set of eyes, I see that all along there were certainly people in New Orleans that didn't drink. I just didn't know it. So that's another whole interesting topic. When we believe everybody drinks, our brain's pretty creative about ignoring evidence to the contrary. I have loved in this journey, just digging into a little bit of how do I bring ingredients together that can make me feel playful, light, celebratory. This is just personal. If I was leaning on alcohol too hard to be an answer and a source for everything, this has been a great way for me to look at what creates levity. So for instance, I love putting on Rebirth Jazz Band, and that gets me pumped up, feet tapping, dancing around the living room. And so very interesting. I also find it interesting to follow love-hate relationship with social media, but in this journey, for me, it's been interesting to find other people who are pursuing an alcohol-free lifestyle and loving it and bringing energy and passion. So for instance, as a young woman in New Orleans that I enjoy following, not only is she celebrating Mardi Gras, but she's in one of the walking groups that are so popular, decked head to toe with a costume she's made. She's such a kind of, to me, you know, badass. I think she sabers bottles of champagne. She doesn't drink them, but she knows how to do the thing with the sword and saber the bottle of champagne. She is enjoying herself so much, but with all of her senses intact. And what I've come to look at this is she's got the front row seat. She's seeing all of Mardi Gras. She's hearing all of it. She's noticing all of it. Every one of her senses is alive and attuned, and she's having a ball. So for me, that kind of, how does that sit with you? I know we grew up in a party gumbo.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a drinker per se. I will have maybe a glass of wine every now and again. It's nothing puritanical. It's just, I remember having a wine cooler and I was about, you know, a young kid, and I was like, man, I don't like this feeling of non-control. And my mom was like, yeah, that's what happens when you drink. And growing and actually being older, seeing how in the blind community, believe it or not, a lot of people drink. And it's really devastating to watch them lose control. And it's absolutely irritating to see how much people will panic to see drunk blind people. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's kind of sad, you know. So it's creating, it's finding a way to create I've always really thought, okay, do we have to drink a beer or a wine?
Yes.
I mean, I never did, you know.
Yeah. I admire so much people like you who could be in that, like I said, this very, you know, alcohol fueled gumbo of Louisiana and be firm in their convictions and say, I don't like how this feels. For me, I never questioned it. I just, this is, and from these beliefs about alcohol start when we're very young, from the time we're 2 years old. And I remember an older brother and his friends wheeling around the shopping cart, drunk late at night, Mardi Gras. And I took that all in as, that's what you do when you're that age. This is an expectation, and all the kinds of things about, I don't trust a man that doesn't drink. I mean, we all grew up in a stew of this. And I think it's very just inspirational that you had the courage of your convictions. And for me, you know, I never questioned it. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's a very helpful and absolutely true, that we can, there are absolutely places where populations where there's even more tendency to, that alcohol, that are at a real risk of dependency on alcohol as a way of coping. And that's what we all did. And we're all doing the absolute best at that time with the tools we were given. No, nothing wrong with that. So nothing wrong with, and it's totally understandable why a young, mom with several kids and, diapers and now homeschooling. And is it understandable why someone would reach for something that could dial down the noise a little bit temporarily? Oh, of course. So for populations that, say this is helping me cope. And so what we can do though, is say, let's talk, let's broaden the conversation about how we can all acquire new tools. So I so appreciate what you just added to the conversation. Thank you. It's probably time you want to feel like you want to head on over. Thank you so much. And I am always available for a conversation. My website makes it very clear that anyone can book a free chat with me. So if you know someone that you think has questions about alcohol and how it's showing up for them, you certainly can send them my way, or they might just find resources on my website. So I'll make sure Matthew shares that out. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.